So I think part of what might be happening is that uh, when we changed who was hosting the meeting, the other one didn't get canceled. So I'm wondering if some folks are in the wrong meeting or waiting to be let into the wrong meeting. So it might take us a few minutes till we get everyone here to get started. For those of you just coming in, I think that there seems to be some confusion, at least I'm dealing with via text, from folks to get into the right spot. So we're trying to get everybody logged in and we'll get started as soon as we have quorum.
Good afternoon, all.
Hey, Eric, we're still trying to get some people logged in.
Yeah, there was another link. We were just on that other link. So Eric, oh, he's already over.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because Kim is hosting it now, and so, but because the other one that was hosted didn't get deleted, I think that was where there was some confusion, although I'm not sure why Anne is having a hard time getting in.
Do you want me to send her the link again? I can try to send it to her.
You know, part of Anne's problem is that she got a new hard drive, and so she got knocked off of all of her city stuff. So I had to forward it to her Comcast, and I don't know, I'm not sure. I just copied it from the link, so I'm not sure why neither her nor Catherine are here.
Yeah, as far as I know, it should have worked even if it was sent to a different email, so.
Oh, Adrian, I have a question while we're waiting. Hello, Adrian?
Kim, do you know, do they have to put their city email in? Anne is having a hard time. It keeps, it's not letting her in.
If it's not letting
You
her
should just
in,
be able to join as guest.
yeah, she should be able to click on his guest and join that way.
And there's the phone number too, if you want to call in until you get in. I think I sent it. Oh, the meeting. Sorry, Gordon, you had a question?
I was just, I missed last meeting. I had problems with my computer right at the last minute. And anyway, my appointment letter, apparently I don't start till January 1st. And I never did communicate that with anybody. So I guess then I'm able to vote until then. I'm pretty sure wouldn't be able to. Did you know?
Well, that's bizarre.
Did anybody know? Did you know that?
No, I don't think that we knew that.
Yeah. So she, I was going to communicate it last meeting, and then, but yeah. So we talked about workforce development and what I can do, and I have no idea. I did meet with shoot, one of our, I can't think of her name right now. Just trying to get information on all the people, with WorkSource or the Workforce Development Council and people associated with that I can maybe get some ideas, and then also about what in the past. I mean, I'd like to know if anybody has any input on what was ever the, the role of employment as far as this group is concerned, and what would have been goals,
Yeah, Gordon, can we,
Yeah.
we should talk about that, and you should talk with, as I think Ann mentioned last time, Diane Zemke.
Yeah, that's right.
about
Yeah, I
that.
met with Diane, and we comprised a list and some good ideas, and I can share that
Okay, great.
at the appropriate time.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that. Thank you, Gordon.
Okay.
All right, well, so Anne just joined us. Hopefully Catherine will join us. And you maybe didn't hear what Gordon just said, which was apparently his reappointment actually is dated starting the first of the year. So technically can't vote, but I'm glad that you're here.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Oh,
But I'm glad that you're here to participate, and I think we still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with Kathy. So we do have quorum, even not counting Gordon towards that quorum. So we can get started. And again, hopefully Catherine will be joining us shortly as well. And I'm not sure if our guests for education are here yet, but we can go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'd like to do is officially call the meeting to order. Sorry about all the difficulty. For anyone who struggled, if you're doing it from your calendar invite, I suggest you go in and make sure you canceled that other calendar invite so you don't have the two of them competing, because I think that caused a few issues for folks. So can I get, are there any changes anyone would like to make to the agenda? And if not, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Hearing no additions, I move to approve.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Abstain. All right, so we have our agenda. Do we have, may I ask, there's one person who's on, and maybe it's somebody who's also on video, but there is one person who is on is a call-in user. Who is the call-in user? A board member? Call-in user? Okay, I guess we will just wonder who that is. With that, is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, are there any changes that need to be made to the November minutes? If not, could I get a motion to approve the November minutes?
I move to approve, Barry.
Thank you, Barry. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. So I think what's up next is the board education. And I don't know if either if John or Deb are here.
Yeah, John Chatburn's here.
Oh, perfect. Oh, thank you so much. And I think you might have been originally given the wrong time. So thank you for scrambling and getting here for us. Sorry about our little bit of discombobulated start, but we're here now and we're eager to hear from you, John. So I will just turn it over to you to share with us about community frameworks and the Cinto Commons.
Sure. And I do have one kind of technical question. I was prepared for Zoom and not this fancy WebEx stuff that you all have at the city, and I have a PowerPoint presentation. Does that work the same way that it does on Zoom? I just hit share and the magic
It should
happens?
work the same. Yeah.
All right, great. We'll go with that. So I'm John Chatburn. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development over here at Community Frameworks. Community Frameworks has been active in Spokane for about 40 years. We were founded after Expo 74, and we do affordable housing development for rental and home ownership. And we own a portfolio of housing that's about 200 units and growing in the Spokane area. And the project that I'm going to talk to you about today is one that CHHS has funded, and it's a really exciting one. It's Cinto Commons and located just north of the river. I've got pretty pictures and stuff to show you and things that I want to go through, but do you have any questions about community frameworks that I can answer in general before I get into the specifics of this? And we can always, I'm always happy to wrap back to things as we go along. Okay, you guys are going to go easy on me. I appreciate it. It's been a long day. Okay. So this is where Cinto Commons is. We're looking at it. It's just north of the river here. You can see the arena down here. This is Howard. This is Washington over here. So it's in good proximity to a lot of great things. It's located adjacent to bus lines. People can walk to the new park down at Riverfront Park. They can walk to grocery stores. It's a highly livable area. Who are we serving at Cinto Commons? So we've got a total of 46 units at Cinto, and it is, we also have a manager's unit there. And we have different populations set aside. So we've got different targets for different groups of folks, and some of these can overlap as well. So if you do the math here, we're probably not going to line out to exactly 46. There's going to be some overlapping. So we have 27 units for families with children, 9 units for persons with special needs. That's multiple special needs, so it can be physical, mental, emotional. 10 units for general low income, and 23 units for those exiting homelessness. And those are either individuals or families. Our rents for this are between 30% and 60% of the area median income. What that roughly equates to is around 400 on the low end, up to about 1,000, probably just north of 1,000 on the high end for rents. But we do have 23 units of what's called project-based rental assistance through the Housing Authority. And so if that allows us to be able to serve these homeless households and be able to provide services as well. And so they will pay up to 30% of their income. And if their income is, say, $900 a month, they would pay $300 a month in rent. And it's on a sliding scale from there. How are we serving them? So a lot of people want to know, what is an affordable housing and how is this, set up to be safe, clean, but also decent, affordable housing, but also housing that's going to be good for the long haul and is a good investment for the communities that it's located in. So in this property, we've got lots of different types of units. And so we're not attracting just one type of a person or population with this. So we've got a mix of studios, 1 beds, 2 beds, and 3 bed units. What that allows us to do is we have different affordability points. We can serve different size families, and we can serve a broader spectrum of people. Our amenities in this property, we've got laundry on each floor. We have community spaces on each floor. We have a big community room down on the bottom. And we've got a really, really cool playground that I'll show you, or at least where it's going to go. These units are highly efficient and durable. We have to build to what's called the Evergreen Sustainable Development Standard. That's required by the Department of Commerce and the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. And we've gone a couple notches above that. We are going to put a large solar array on the top of this project, and that'll help reduce our operating costs as well. All the units have ductless mini splits. We have a relationship with Mitsubishi Corporate, and we were able to get project pricing for this project, which saved us some money, but also helped us get some good technical assistance to make sure we were getting the right products for this application. We do have on-site tenant services. Transitional Programs for Women is our service provider, and they will be providing case management. And we also have on-site property management as well as an on-site maintenance person. And as I said before, we've got a fantastic location. So how are we paying for this project? That's one of the top questions we get from folks. This is the primary funding source for this is the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, specifically the 9% Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. And if it's helpful to this board, I'm happy to come back another time and do a session just on the tax credit program, because it's its own kind of sausage making for affordable housing. But in this, we call this the capital stack, the stack of capital that we needed to get this project funded. We have City of Spokane Home Funds, Spokane County, Housing Trust Fund, which is actually it's through the Washington State Housing Trust Fund, but it wound up being National Housing Trust Fund dollars. They have some discretion about whether they use state or federal funds there. And then the 9% tax credit equity is taking up roughly 3/4, a little less than 3/4 of our funding there. So what are we paying for out of those funding sources? So you can see the lion's share of our costs are construction. Construction is expensive, particularly expensive on this site because we built it. Basalt is really prevalent around Spokane and particularly prevalent in this area. And we had to blast for 13 weeks straight to make the site buildable. You can also see that we're also paying for soft costs, financing fees, reserves, other development costs, and the cost to acquire the site. So before we kind of move on to the pretty pictures of our project, I just wanted to pause to see if you have any questions about kind of the financial stuff of this project, and particularly our sources and uses, what we're spending money on, where it came from. I didn't put in here, but our total development cost was about $13.5 million. Our hard construction cost is going to be wind up being around $8.9 to $9 million.
I'm just curious how you've been managing through the difficulty and finding crews to work and the the radical increase price of construction costs and things like that. How have you been managing that?
Yeah, so we were pretty fortunate on this project that we were able to get under contract before lumber was on the way up, but it hadn't reached its apex yet. And so we were able to manage through some of that. We are having some supply chain shortages in terms of appliances. And things have kind of shown up right as we've needed them, but not a whole lot before. Our strategy in an environment like this is to use proven partners. And so Walker Construction is our general contractor on this. And one of the things that they've been able to do that some of the other contractors that we've used in the past haven't been able to is they have their own in-house crews. And so when they haven't been able to get a sub, they've been able to self-perform some of that work. For example, it's been really difficult to get concrete crews. And so they were able to self-perform that work, and that's how they mitigated some of that risk and were able to keep us on time and on schedule. A smaller GC that's just a paper GC wouldn't have that option. So there's a time and a place to use both of either, a small contractor or a large one. But in this case, it definitely worked for us to use a bigger partner that had a more robust labor pool. Guys are pretty quiet. All right.
Okay, I'll ask a question.
Okay.
The tax credits.
Mhm.
I don't need an exact number, but could you give an estimate of how many units the tax credit has over the years? It's been around like what, maybe 20 years. How many units it has supported in your program?
You mean in our at Community Frameworks?
Yeah, the Community Frameworks has used or taken advantage of.
So let me caveat this by saying we do work for ourselves, but then we do client work as well. And so between those, it's, probably north of 1,000 for sure.
Okay.
In our portfolio, probably half of them would be tax credit units.
Okay.
And there's
I am pleased to hear that. And I'm wondering, are there barriers to using that process?
Yeah.
I know it's very complicated. Why, can you give an idea of why more units aren't being produced through that process?
It's not a particularly efficient funding source, but it's a large funding source. It's a highly competitive funding source. And the way that the policies through the Finance Commission, the Washington State Housing Finance Commission is the agency that administers the tax credits. It's set up right now that Spokane they have three different buckets for tax credits. One is the King County, one is the metro counties, and the other is the rest of the state. Spokane is in the metro counties. And within the metro counties, the way that the policy is set up is that each county will essentially get one 9% project. And a 9% tax credit project is going to fund roughly 50 units of housing
Right.
a year.
Okay, before you go into too many more details, I guess what's motivating my question is most well, a lot of folks in Spokane say we need affordable housing a month ago, a week ago, a year
Sure.
ago. What is tax credits? Could it be ramped up some way to have it happening faster, quicker, and getting more units on board? And
Yeah.
that's the reason why it's not.
So I'll share our project timeline with you. That's in my presentation as well. But I think any project using the normal affordable housing tools that we have right now is going to take 2.5 to 3 years from concept to keys. And so, and you can go faster, but there's also risk that comes with that. That's when we find architects make mistakes, general contractors make mistakes. And it's often difficult when we're using when we're using public money in general with the different review periods to hit the gas pedal on those kinds of things. But I do think Senator Cantwell has had a bill to expand the affordable housing tax credit program. So there's two kinds of tax credits, and I can get into the weeds really deep, really quick. So
No, that's okay, John.
okay.
I just, it's like, obviously, we're not going to get affordable housing, at 10,000 units real fast. I think everybody, at least those of us who don't know all the weedy details like you do, just wish there was some quicker, better, faster, more efficient way to make it happen. And obviously there isn't. So
We all wish it were cheap, quick, and easy, and that everyone had a safe, clean, affordable house yesterday.
yeah.
And what I like to tell folks, because there's this huge need, and Cento it's 46 units, and so you can lots of people say this is a drop in the ocean, and that's one way to look at it. But you can also look at it as the first raindrop that breaks the drought, and that it's a sign of better things to come. And that, this is the stuff that we need to help make our community stronger and better. And it's not just one type of housing, it's lots of different types of housing. And there's not just one solution, it needs to be many.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get the community pulling in the same direction. Thank you, John.
All right. So I'm gonna, Adrian, did you have a question? Okay. So this is what Cento looked like when we acquired the property. Former council member Lynch was one of the property owners, and this is basalt in here. So you can see it's up pretty high there, and it's about 6 feet above street level. And we took it down to about 12 feet below street level. So that's what all the dynamite activity was about. So I have a video what we did out there. I think this will work. All right, so maybe this doesn't want to autoplay. These are mats of tires that go up in the air about 20 feet, and it's really cool. So this is what Cento looked like late summer. We've come out of the ground and got all of our cladding on, and it was a beautiful day out there the days we took this picture. You can see we're 4 stories in the back, 3 stories in the front. We've got some really, really great views of downtown from the ones that face the river. Here you can see we've was taken maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, nearing completion here. We've got our final colors up. Landscaping is already in, and we've decided to add a little bit. We add a little extra funding in this project, so we added some texture with this Rosetta Stone. We're doing our best to make sure that our housing blends into the neighborhood and doesn't look like naturally occurring affordable housing, that it's resilient for the long haul, but yet it's not, doesn't stigmatize the people who live there. This is what it looks like on the inside. This is a 3-bedroom unit, the kitchen and one of those. They haven't done the final clean yet. That's why there's drywall dust all over everything. But we've got cabinets that are CARB compliant, low VOC. We were able to put in solid surface countertops for durability in this. That way, if somebody has a really hot pan and they set it right on the countertop, it can be resilient. We have vinyl plank floor. We think that the life cycle on these units is going to be relatively long, and they're going to be durable for the long haul. The hallways are really light and open. We've got LED lights both in the units and the common spaces, and you can see one of our ductless mini split heads right there. We've got wayfinding on each of the floors. Each floor has a different accent color so people can tell where they are. This is where the playground's going to go. It's on back order from someplace, and will be in the spring. And we have this trike track that goes around here in a circle so that kids can ride their trikes around the circle. And that's kind of a cool amenity so that we make sure that we've got places for kids of all ages. And we also have the building's wired for fiber as well. And we think that that'll be a big benefit if we ever have to go back down to a lockdown situation where kids are having to do remote learning, or people have to work from home. So here's the project milestones that I mentioned to kind of give you a sense of how we've moved through this project. And I will say this has moved probably about a year quicker than most of our tax credit projects. We've got a project out in Airway Heights that's taken us 10 years to get to this point. And so this one took about 3 years. So this is moving pretty quickly. So in March of 2019, we acquired the site. And then from June to December, we went through 4 different funding rounds, and were successful in, we went through 5 different funding rounds, and we were successful in 4 out of the 5. It took us until November to be able to close our tax credit funding. And then we started completion immediately after closing. We anticipate having our certificate of occupancy on December 15th, so just about 2 weeks. And we have, out of the 46 units, we already have over 200 applicants. And that was just after the first week that we had been open for leasing. So that's just shows you what the demand is for something like this. So I'm saying February, March to be 100% leased. And that's probably more of a factor of our asset management team and property management teams to make sure that we've got the tenants qualified than it is to actually find the right people to move them in. So I think I was also asked to say, what kind of recommendations would I have for CHHS, or ways that this particular group could be helpful. And so I was kind of trying to think about, what have I not heard people say that would be helpful or important to us? So I think it's important to realize what a significant driver the construction cost is in the total cost of affordable housing. And it's not just that the bricks and the sticks cost more, but it's that they have a multiplier effect because so many things are based on that construction cost. So for example, if for every $1 of construction cost, we have to carry a 10% contingency on that $1. We have to pay sales tax on that $1. But then our architect's fees are based on that $1. Our general contractor is going to base their overhead and profit on that $1. And often developers will base their fees on that construction cost. The feedback that we've gotten from our general contractors is that there's a trend in public funding to have a 10% retainage requirement. The 10% is held out until after project completion. because different government agencies don't move very quick, it takes a long, long time to get them their retainage. So subs are often uh, just writing this cost off and increasing their price on publicly funded jobs by 10%. And so it's not just the 10% that they're increasing, that forces everything else up and has a multiplying effect that ripples throughout the general contractor's overhead and profit, the contingency that we carry, the sales tax that we're having to provide for, and our professional fees that we have to pay for. So one of the things that you can do, consider contracts that have a 5% retainage requirement, and I think you'll get the same result. You'll get have the same effect with the retainage, but we won't see quite as much inflation in the construction cost, or it's a different way to try to control it. Any questions about that?
I'm sorry, this is Catherine Alexander. Could you repeat that? It cut out, and I'd like to be able to write down your recommendation.
Yeah, my recommendation is for public funded contracts, so City of Spokane contracts, to have a 5% retainage requirement instead of a 10% retainage requirement. When we're general contractors are indicating that when we have to retain such a large amount and it takes such a long time to get it, their subs are just writing that off and increasing their prices by 10%. Okay, and any other questions about that?
So John, this is Betsy.
Mhm.
So do you guys actually have development fees that come back to the project on the end? Or do you deal with development fees that come back on projects? I know on some of the HUD ones, there are development fees that come back. Is that part of this particular process?
Yeah, so Cento Commons has a developer fee, and that's how Community Frameworks gets paid for its work. And how we also guarantee the project and are able to support some of the functions of the project. We don't set ours on a percentage of construction cost. We set it on what we think we need and what we think is reasonable, and it's always less than what's allowed. Does that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
We're in the business of providing people housing. We're not for profit, and we're mission driven. So another thing that could be helpful is the home program, lots of programs have Section 3 requirements for Whitman minority business-owned enterprise. And I've seen this on a lot of projects where general contractors will say, hey, we advertised to the list that the City of Spokane has or that somebody has, but nobody responded. So we got the checkbox. And that seems to be, even by contractors I really like and respect, kind of seems to be not as good a job as they could do. And we've tried to do some outreach on our own and had limited success with that. We think, we haven't done any research on this, but we think that there are probably minority contractors, subcontractors out there that would probably like to do this kind of work, but don't really have an entree. They don't know, what's it take to do publicly funded work? How do I do this kind of work? And general contractors that are really busy are always going to go with the partners that they know first. Perhaps the city could be a broker or with partners like Community Frameworks to be able to, to outreach and train those subcontractors as to what public funding requirements are. How do they become part of the pool of contractors? And then so that we can, in good faith, meet those WIMBY requirements.
I agree. That's to say that has been a conversation on council side. It's how to beef up those organizations to participate in this, but there's never been any really outreach to them. And since many of them are small businesses, to help them have the capacity to get into the government arena can be challenging. And sometimes we just go with what we know. But that is definitely on the radar, John, of direction we're headed.
Great. And I think, you know, let me be clear about what I'm asking for. It's not to ratchet up the requirement. I guess it's fine to ratchet up the requirement as long as there's outreach. Like we gotta develop the pool of people to employ for this kind of work, and we want to do that, but haven't been successful in that in the past. Efficient use of funds is kind of tied into the next one. And that is sometimes community frameworks will get asked, you know, what do we think about would be a good use of, you know, 1406 money or 2060 money or all these different pockets of money. And it seems to me that it would be really beneficial if, you know, you could look at the funding picture holistically, and perhaps I'm preaching to the choir here, I don't know. You know, look at all of the tools that you have to be able to address this problem rather than to look at it in a little window. Because, you know, one of the things that we do as developers is we stack these funds and we deal with conflicting requirements. And, you know, some money's good for some things and some money's not good for other things. And so to be strategic about that, I think would be really important. And I think it's also important to look in a multi-year window because, as I said, a lot of these projects are going to take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to come to fruition. And to bring stability to a developer to say, you know, hey, we can't fund you this year, but we would like to pipeline you for a future year and give you priority. There are jurisdictions like Bellingham that have done that, and it brings it brings some stability to the process, and it also helps not-for-profits to not compete against each other and to compete against poverty more, because we're not spending money on these pre-development costs over and over again to be able to get applications ready for funding. So I think that's something to consider in the process as well. I think that's all I got for you.
Thanks for bringing up that last point, John. I mean, and as you said, it is preaching to the choir a bit, but I think that is a two parts of that are a struggle that we've had, the different pots of money, but often the lack of communication between who is overseeing those pots of money becomes a real challenge. And to your point, with some of the, sometimes there's competing priorities, and you know, a whole different way you have to apply for them, and other cases you have to make that makes it a challenge. I'm also really interested in, I know in an informal way, there had been previously, also on the Affordable Housing Committee, there have been conversations where we've said, we're not going to fund this now because you're not ready for this funding. But we feel you'll have a really strong application next year, you know, sort of essentially not a guarantee, but oftentimes directing folks to hold off for that next year. But I think a more intentional and process-driven multi-year way of looking at things would be helpful in that, for, as you said, for all of the different nonprofits, especially so that they're not competing against each other, or we're not pitting them against each other, having to make those kinds of tough decisions. So I really appreciate that you bringing those points up there at the end. Any questions or comments for John?
This is Catherine Alexander again, and this might be a bit provocative or naive. I'm not sure which, but I'm wondering if John is willing to share any thoughts about why some of these things haven't been done before, because it sort of seems like common sense. So I'm just wondering if there were barriers to implementing some of these ideas that you already know about.
Well, the retainage one is a public policy question that I don't really have control over. Let me pull up my notes and see what I just told you all. With the WIMBY stuff, I think that's been more of a bandwidth issue for anybody that's trying to do it. And I don't think it's really been a priority until the last year that it's really come into the limelight. So I think that's why it hasn't been done. And I think that's probably on both sides. I don't think funders or developers have really been serious about it. And it's just been a, kind of a checkbox thing that we have to do to get our funding. And I think that we're starting to see things differently and that we want to do things differently. With pipelining and stability, um, I think that's probably a culture shift that needs to happen among the affordable housing community as well. And it's difficult, to coordinate with others to say, what are you planning to do this year if you know you're going to be up in funding against them? And we're talking about ways that we can collaborate and not have collaboration so much, but that we can work with others. But that it requires a reciprocal, reciprocity there that's sometimes difficult.
Thank you very much.
So this is George. I'd also like to add kind of to what John's been mentioning as those recommendations that's really what we would like to see as well. We've had our own internal capacity issues to be able to provide some of those trainings. I actually was on a Section 3 training earlier today as HUD's trying to ramp up, and pre-COVID, HUD was they've kind of beefed up the Section 3 regulations a little bit. And so they're trying to do a better job of getting outreach out into the community. And those are, I actually was having a conversation with Eric earlier today about how important it is that we're providing that level of technical assistance to our community of providers, which includes developers as well as those social service providers. So they've got a better handle and understanding of exactly what it is that they're doing. There are a lot of tools in our box that we just are not able to utilize at this time, but very much support the recommendations that John brought before you all, because those are all really, really important. And let me also make a plug for the Affordable Housing Committee in that John had mentioned, trying to coalesce these funds together so that we can have a greater impact. And we've got some overlap on committees throughout this organization that makes it difficult to do that. And so streamlining funding as well as organizational responsibility, I think those are all opportunities that we have before us.
And thank you, George. And I would just add to that conversation that, being able to kind of actually field that technical assistance capability is a pretty big lift that we haven't necessarily, I think, had, really the capacity or the charter to do previously. So that's something that we have to carefully consider, because it's not it's not as easy as a light switch to do. I mean, we'd have to obviously have some pretty competent people that could be responsive to, especially developers, which are already pretty astute, on the process. So I just would like to emphasize that technical assistance piece. I think we certainly see the need, but it is probably one of the more difficult things to be able to achieve.
Yeah, and let me be clear, I was offering recommendations, not unfunded mandates. So I cognizant that, wasn't trying to increase anyone's workload.
Well, and John, you made a recommendation as part of that I heard that was like a partnership,
Yeah.
and utilizing folks like yourself. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity there, where we can take a look at future uses of public service revenue and funding to be able to help support folks or organizations like Community Frameworks that can provide, if we don't have the capacity to do it, then there are others that we can support to provide that to the community. So I think
Yes.
that's a really important opportunity there as well.
That was a clear offer for help on my part. Thank you.
To piggyback a little bit on what George said, I'm also hearing a real need to bring various parts of this together to talk, and I'm wondering if that's something that the city could support.
No, I think we're very cognizant of that, and I think between both the council and administration, we know that this kind of whole regional look and how we kind of get better at I think the alignment of our various governance pieces is something we have to, we have to kind of continue that dialogue and figure out how to better align.
Great, thank you. Any last questions or comments? Thank you so much for joining us, John. That was so much great information. We really appreciate it. A little disappointed we couldn't watch the video. It seemed like it was going to be pretty exciting. So
We did
you
watch
had
it
to-
on repeat for a while once it came over to the office. They wouldn't let us be over there push any buttons when they were blowing stuff up though.
Well, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. And I did write the note about tax credit education in the future, so we might be taking you up on that as well.
Yeah.
So thanks so much. We
Yeah.
appreciate
Well,
it.
thanks so much for having me. Take care, everybody, and thank you for your good work.
All right. So we have a few different discussions and action items, and we're going to start with the SNAP housing programs recommendations. And hopefully you all received the updated briefing paper that George sent out. But I will turn that over to George.
So before I start, did anyone else have a visual of Wile E. Coyote like with his TNT when John was talking there? I just had this perfect visual right there. Yeah, what we have before you is really looking to extend the contracts with SNAP for their single family rehab as well as their essential repair programs. So with staff turnover and the important work that SNAP does for these two programs, we went before the Affordable Housing Committee and asked for a review and recommendation on this matter. So the committee met a few weeks ago and approved the recommendation to renew. It was also great. We had SNAP, both of the program managers there at that meeting to be able to talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities moving forward into this next calendar year. They were very kind, but honestly, probably one of the biggest challenges of both of these programs is CHHS capacity to support our partners in doing this work. So with that being said, Tessa, if you're on, I want to introduce you. So as part of this action, we have to introduce Tessa, who is going to be responsible for managing both these programs. So Tessa, if you could just do a quick introduction to the board members.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tessa Gillett, and I am the new program professional in CHHS working for the single family rehab and essential repairs. This is my first week, so I'm learning a lot. I'm originally from Wisconsin. I went to college there and worked for 3 years for the state of Wisconsin, managing the statewide Green and Healthy Schools program. Then I moved out here to go to graduate school at the University of Idaho. And after graduating, I worked for a little while in Spokane as a community organizer. And most recently, I was working at Lewis Clark State College as a program advisor. But I am very excited to be with the city and happy to meet all of you.
Thanks, Tessa. And we are so excited. Tessa accepted this position some time ago, and we've just been like waiting for her to arrive. So we're very, very excited to have Tessa here with us, and particularly excited to have finally an FTE that is responsible for this huge portfolio and an incredibly important portfolio. So future briefings on this will come from Tessa. I'm taking us to the finish line here, and then Tessa is going to grab the baton and own it moving forward. So really the action here that we're looking for today is, as it's written in the briefing paper, we're looking to approve advancing to City Council the Affordable Housing Committee's recommendation to renew SNAP single family repair and essential home repair programs at the same funding level and performance levels as calendar year 2021. And those are listed in the briefing paper at the bottom of page 1 and into page 2 if you want to take a look at that.
Any questions for George or for the Affordable Housing Committee? And but before we do that, Gordon, good news. Kim looked up your reappointment information, and they informed me that your reappointment was actually dated back to 2021, January 1st. So you are good to vote right now. So good news.
Okay, so that wasn't made very clear when I was talking to her.
So,
Yeah, on the one that
You-
council voted for to approve you to the board, it says January 1st, 2021, so you should be good to go.
Oh, okay, all right.
good news.
Thanks.
All right. Any questions for George or for the Affordable Housing Committee? And if not, could I get a motion to approve and to forward that recommendation to City Council?
I make a motion to approve.
Right, Gordon. Thank you.
Barry seconds.
And I'll second.
Oh,
Okay.
Barry, I think Barry came in first, Catherine, but thanks.
Okay, all
Any-
right, no problem.
All those in favor say aye or raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we will move forward with that recommendation. Thank you so much, George, for helping us get to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Adrian, one thing that I wanted to just ask of the board is now that we've got Tess on board, I know that before the Affordable Housing Committee met, there was one member in particular that wanted additional information. We continue to struggle with getting folks to understand and know that these programs exist. And so as members of this board, we would love to hear from you all. How can we better communicate to you? How can we be a liaison between SNAP, the work that they're doing, the individuals that are being served, so that you all have awareness of the work, and then also how do we communicate out to the neighborhoods and the citizens of Spokane so they're aware that these programs exist as well. We never struggle, SNAP never struggles finding people. There are a lot of people that seek these out, but for whatever reason, we have difficulty with folks being aware of these programs.
So one thing, and Tessa, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're looking forward to working with you. I think one of the things, and we've been talking about this a little bit in exec, but I think in general, our ongoing projects or ongoing things like this, we tend to only revisit once a year. And I think that that's part of our problem and even us as a board being aware enough to be spreading that information. And I think we need to, not be overly cumbersome and asking for lots and lots of reporting such that it becomes too much work. But I think we need to work with a lot of these different both funding cycles and particular programs on getting a more regular check-in that becomes a part of the anticipated agenda at certain times during the year. I think that would be a helpful communication tool for those of us on the board, so we're not sort of relearning about these things just the one time a year that they come up, would be my sort of thought. And then I'd be interested, Catherine, in hearing if you have any thoughts about how to get some of this program information out to the neighborhoods or anyone else.
Well, I think sending the information to the neighborhoods would be helpful. And I have to say I'm having a little memory loss here, but the District 81's survey tool, which we have already used in a couple of cases, asking questions is a way of stimulating involvement, getting input, but also it's letting people know what's happening in a slightly different way instead of saying this is happening, but asking for thoughts on a project or resources or connections or whatever, but using that tool because it allows the neighborhoods and the people who respond to not only respond, but to see what others do. And that dialogue-ish kind of piece is really engaging, and it really makes people feel like they're participating. So those would be a couple of things.
Betsy, please.
Hey, Adrian, so for those of us who are library users, the library has a newsletter like monthly. it is like inexpensive, almost free way to get out any information, especially about this type of work that's available, that we could just partner with them down the road. So it's just another venue to communicate with people that we could reach that we would not otherwise reach. So I think we just need to put our heads together as to what other free or almost free communication tools are out there that we could be piggybacking on.
That's great. Thank you.
Adrian,
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that our Office of Neighborhood Services also has access to the neighborhood councils and community assemblies. And so they have communication lines to the out to the neighborhoods as well. And I work directly with ONS on that. So I'd be happy to be a conduit to get information out that way as well.
That's great. And I see Barry's note about putting info in the city utility bills as well. That's a great idea. I'm curious, George, and I don't remember if we talked about this in affordable housing. Do we have, I guess, thinking about these programs, do we have good demographics on them? Like, is it clear that there are neighborhoods and or folks, whether it might be people of color or maybe people experiencing disabilities or things? Do we have like a sense of if there are people that we're kind of missing that don't seem to be applying to SNAP for these funds?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Adrian. I don't have an answer for that, having not really kind of done any of the management of it. But I think that's something that certainly as now we've got Tessa on board and as she's kind of making this her own, would absolutely love to see some of those performance indicators and kind of help us right size and find more targeted approaches to it.
Thoughts? We'll keep thinking about this as well, and Tessa, please, as you get more engaged with these programs, please know that you can come back and come to the Affordable Housing Committee, which is a different set of folks. There's a few of us that overlap, but it is a different set of folks, and we'd be happy to continue to help think through this with you.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
Oh, and Barry has another note too. Yeah. The NAACP does have a good regular email update as well. That's great. Thank you, Barry. All right. So the next action item, earlier this year, we had talked about the possibility, because Ann and I are both terming off technically in April, and recognizing that there's a bit of a gap of experience on the board with both of us stepping away in April. And we brought this up earlier in the year, and I was uncertain about whether I was going to request this of the board or not. But now I do think it would be helpful for the board if board members are interested in the possibility of extending my term at least until the end of the year, so that as we go into the transition of new board leadership, normally the former chair sits for at least a year on the executive committee and helps with that transition. But if I term off in April, I would not be able to stay on for that year. Having had some good conversations with Barry and Bob and Catherine and some folks who are considering and interested in stepping up along with Jerry, I felt more comfortable offering that possibility of staying on through the end of the year, and especially given that we haven't had a retreat over the last 2 years. Nobody on the board except for Ann and I and Gordon have been a part of retreats, and so also to help with the planning for the board retreat that we'll have this year. So the motion, if it's the will of the board, and you can have a discussion around this, would be to make a request for my membership, on the board to continue until the end of 2022. Thanks, Barry.
I so move.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yay.
Second it.
Thank you,
second that.
Jerry. Any more discussions?
I
So-
move that we have no discussion and quickly vote yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Agent, I just want clarity. So are we just suspending the bylaws for a 1-year exception?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
And we
All right.
we do have precedent. We did this for Diane Zemke, because a similar thing happened when Ann and I were first on the board, that
Okay.
there was a big shift in longevity and experience on the board.
Gotcha. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Ayes have it.
Aye.
So goes the order.
All right,
Thank you, Adrian.
okay. Cross that off the list. And then briefly, we just need to do an approval of the 2022 board schedule, which would just be to continue to have monthly meetings the first Wednesday of the month from 4 until 6. We in the past have done things like said every other month, or not had a meeting, say in July, or things of that nature. Approving the calendar for every Wednesday for the calendar year still gives us the flexibility if we have a month that we don't have business we need to attend to, that we can cancel. It's much more difficult to add a special meeting in if we've already canceled them. So our idea was that we would approve the schedule of monthly first Wednesday of the month from 4 to 6 p.m. And then with an anticipated board retreat in September, which we don't have to approve the time now, but just as a heads up for your calendars, that we would like to do that longer meeting in September. But for right now, we would just be approving first Wednesday every month for 2022 from 4 to 6 p.m. So the motion would just need to approve that calendar.
We'll move to
I'll
approve the
sec-
board schedule.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll second.
Thank you, Catherine. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye or raise your hand, please.
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we have our board schedule for the 2022, and we'll talk more about the retreat after the first of the year. So with that, Eric, can you please provide us with the director's report?
Sure. Good afternoon, all. Obviously we're continuing to move forward at the city in terms of kind of the rebuilding structure. Last week, I was appointed as kind of the interim neighborhood housing and human services director to kind of continue to provide some stability while we go to kind of a nationwide search after the first of the year. The intention is that we try to find that right, I think, experienced individual that can come in, and then upon whatever selection process that goes through, that I would remain in place as kind of like that number 2 individual to provide some continuity, as they come on board and take over. So I think this is something that just as I've seen over this past 3 months, that I want to make sure that we kind of have that right level of stability and kind of rebuilding back, not lose some momentum. So I look forward to kind of that ongoing role in helping, this board and our other boards meet the goals that they have. I think we have some great opportunities, as we've discussed, in terms of how we can kind of look at better alignment, across, the region with the other agencies, as well as, I think just with our different governance structures to help make sure I think we get that better alignment. So we look forward to those conversations. I do know, that at the, COC level, as well as, I think, internally, we're looking to kind of look at I think more of that strategic planning review, and start looking at kind of, I think, more globally how we want to kind of, evolve, processes and structure and look at, I think, more refined goal setting. And certainly, I don't believe we can do that in a vacuum, right? That kind of needs, all these same community partners that are part of part of the, CHHS board, part of, obviously the region, part of COC. As George, mentioned there, we do also see some overlap, and so always looking, I think, for those better opportunities where we can align functions, to help us, save one more meeting where necessary. But certainly, we also look to leverage, I think, the expertise that's out there because it's always going to be sorely needed. So I think one of the things that I will do, if I'm empowered to share, is I will just kind of give, I think that, kind of quick status of where we are based on some of those priority items. So let me make sure I'm empowered to share here. Looks like I can. So can you see that PowerPoint?
We can see it.
Okay, so I know I've showed this in the past, or in separate functions, but I just kind of wanted to give an update and kind of where we are. The green check marks kind of represent the past kind of 2.5 months of surge effort that we've done, kind of trying to get basically things at least either on track, completed, or at least resourced. And as you've seen with the introduction with Tessa, we've brought on I think about 5 total staff members so far over this past couple of months, which certainly has added I think some additional energy and resourcing horsepower. There is certainly that education and learning curve, that onboarding. So you'll see that staff onboarding thing as one of those kind of 5 top items because it does take a lot of time, right? And so it is important obviously to go through that to make sure that our new team members kind of get up to speed as quickly as they can and go through that learning curve. We have I think 4 responses back to the RFP that we put out about 3 weeks ago in terms of additional surge shelter capacity in the region for between kind of now and at least April, if not June. This would be using basically ESG CV COVID funding. We are looking to activate at least the first portion of that in terms of hoteling solutions, basically within the next week or 2. So we're prepping that contract. That was based on kind of a COVID team review that was done that gave kind of a thumbs up, literally to all 4 of the options that were received. They were very different options. One was the hoteling solution. One is a kind of a more longer term solution for families, which again we're just entering the conversation with that proposer in terms of what does the sustainability look like, since this funding would just be really the starting piece and expires. That funding expires in June, based on the nature of it. So we'd want to make sure that that's kind of setting up for a sustainable solution as it would go forward. The other 2 basically are for VOA and Hope House, and making sure that there's kind of some bridge funding capability to kind of get them through, but also leading to kind of that broader review with VOA in terms of how we kind of have a sustainable model for them going forward. I think jointly between the county and the city, and that discussion is scheduled for I think December 8th, if memory serves. So we've got some good options on the table that will help, I think, give us some additional surge capability, including within the next week or so, that will give us, I think, a little bit better flexibility as we look at cold snaps or other areas to have some additional bed space. Just in terms of rundown and numbers, just so I think you have an idea, the hoteling piece would kind of start with basically kind of a 20 person capacity, expanding to 40 people within kind of that a 2 to 3 week period. The family piece would potentially provide units for up to 30 families. And so we're still looking at what that looks like in terms of both funding and sustainable funding for them going forward. There was also, and I forgot to mention, a DV solution that was represented, that was kind of, in the couple hundred nights capability, as kind of that bridge or transition, housing capability, with some wraparound services, for that population. And then again, VOA, which is really kind of that bridge financing, as I mentioned. Any questions on those before I kind of move on to a couple other items? The other pieces, again, so that basically represents that 6 or 7 month surge plan. We're also continuing, to help kind of, staff and sponsor that coordinated entry conversation, which is really meant to help the providers in terms of, I think both changing some of the measures they use to promote who is getting, some of the housing slots, as well as make sure that transition housing, through the Salvation Army with their Way Out Center, is kind of better represented in terms of how it fits into the overall structure of the ecosystem, if you will. We have a couple of, HUD items that we're working on in terms of annual performance reports, primarily through our CMIS group. And we're also working some findings, that have matured through the HUD side on CDBG. So those are kind of those kind of short-term operational pieces. We are kind of, in a kind of final interview stage with, a potential CHHS director candidate. And that's something that Councilmember Wilkerson, I'll be, reaching out to you and a few others to have as part of the conversation to do that review. And again, as I mentioned, since we did not come up with, I think, an initial candidate through our initial screening for CHHS director that really could elevate to the NHHS side, we will be doing that national search, after the first of the year. And then the other red box there, which I'll mention again, is we've talked about this kind of refined governance process. How do we get better connectivity and integration between the different groups, and both the mayor and the council support that process. And I think we now just have to kind of give it a better venue in terms of what are we trying to achieve. And so the thought there is, that we try to kind of consolidate to look at goal setting. And then to a degree, let that goal setting help inform necessarily what those various regional groups or governance groups really should potentially be primary or be involved in terms of helping kind of, either set those goals or look at the strategies and the planning that need to come to meet those goals. So that's what we're kind of, trying to kind of gen up to circulate with all of you. And again, the intention for this is that we kind of circulate this information for feedback, as a draft, not necessarily as a final product, because we believe we need to kind of collaborative input to get it to be reflective of what all of you need. And then finally, just in terms of, I think that the two items that I'd mentioned is that we are kind of really deep into looking at how we're structured. And part of this is really to kind of be more responsive to what we see the needs are, I think in the region with the providers, with our electeds, with, I think, basically our community. And I think that will, I think, lead to, I think, a long-standing need to elevate housing on parallel with human services. I've heard this discussed from all of you in some way, shape, or form. And so I think trying to activate that, so we have, I think, a little bit more senior leadership dedicated to the housing side, is something that we're looking at. And again, I think that we look at some participatory review as we look at those different kind of, organization structures and the second and third order impacts that they would make. So the good news, I think, in all this, is you see the check marks, on the top bar, is that we really, I think, November became the change for us in terms of, getting out of triage mode and starting to look more longer term. And as we onboarded staff, really, that helps us with some of the critical, gaps. Then this positions us, I think, better to start really looking at planning after the first of the year, and starting to be a little bit more proactive rather than reactive. So we're looking forward to that. And as part of that, what we're trying to look at and build, we're trying to build out the kind of total portfolio of what NHHS and CHHS does, so we can get better visibility to that. and then kind of provide that as like a progress report, at some point in early January, that really can be kind of like an input into, whatever strategic planning process update we want to do, as well as, I think just that ongoing review of how the city can support the good work in the community. So I'll stop there. Pending any questions, I did have one additional item to add, if there's any questions. All right, so there is an ask that I would have, and part of this is going to be, again, participation on reviews as we look at how we're structured and how we need to do business going forward. I think that one of the things that I wanted to get, I think, board feedback on is, we have the kind of the next kind of a tranche of rent assistance funding that will be done as an RFP. Basically, that RFP will launch within the next kind of few days, by Monday at the latest. And then we are looking at potentially having a need in terms of, kind of the review on that RFP. And so I just needed to see the time frame for that would be, that we would be, I think the kind of the end of the first week and second week in January, needing to have kind of that RFP or eval, committee review work being done. And so I just kind of wanted to put that on the table to see if that can be supported by the CHHS board, so we can take that information back to the council and administration to see if that's a viable option. So
Anne, is your committee ready for that?
Yeah, I think they would be. Yeah, I think they would be willing to do that if it's a brand new RFP. Yeah, I'm sure that they would be. It's just bad timing. That's the problem with this. I got to tell you, it's really bad timing.
Well, it's and I think that it's all I would counter with, and you're right, is obviously this is one of the most important, impactful programs that we have going right now for our community. And the Live Stories piece of it, will get us through about, the end of January, right? Just based on the pacing that they're going at. And whether they're confirmed, in the, RFP, to continue, or someone else is, we certainly want to make sure there isn't a gap, right, in terms of people being able to submit for rent assistance. So, that's why, it is kind of important, and we tried to buy as much time as we could so it could be after the holidays. But I'm afraid it's important work that we need to get done. Now, we could constitute another team to do it. And this is something that on the first batch that we did, I should probably provide this education. There was a few members from the council, from the city council, as well as the administration, that kind of scored and went through the selection process. So there are other opportunities or things that we could do, but I certainly wanted to, since you're the charter group, I thought we should bring it back to you for that discussion first.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that we can get the committee together. I'll need George's help to do that, though, or Margaret, whoever's in charge, just to help bring that together. I'm leaving the country. I can do it from Mexico, and I've done it in the past, but it just adds a bit of a wrinkle. And my question then would be, the one that we just sent forward that went to city council, was that approved?
Yes. And that's the one that kind of gives us these next couple of months of that last tranche of funding.
Right.
And I think the desire of it was, I mean, the concern is, and again, like I said, this is there's no rightness or wrongness to this, at least in my view. There's a concern. Is there anything we can do to better activate and more quickly activate rent assistance? And so I think that's the desire, and we heard that from the council, but I think we all share it to one degree or another. And I think this will allow us a look to see if there's any better way or quicker way that we can help move that forward. And the only other commentary I would add to that is that we have seen increasing performance and delivery from Live Stories, which has been great to see. And if that just gets confirmed as the best option, then awesome. But if there is some other better option, or parallel option that we can do, then I think we're probably, it probably is a good thing for us to do that and see if we can more quickly activate the rent assistance for our community.
Okay. Well,
And
let's-
I would just also say, I know, up until you get quorum, but if you're having difficulty getting folks from the RFP committee together and there are spaces available and you would like some more feedback, I would be willing as a board member to
Okay.
participate on that, and there might be other board members willing to do that. So long as we
Yeah.
don't get above quorum, but so that we
No.
would be able to make sure that the committee feels full.
Okay,
Well,
the
and
other,
Councilmember Wilkerson, I mean, I would, I would recommend that if you or whomever replaces Councilmember Burke, on this group, it would be good to have that connection. So that ultimately, as we do go back to council, then you're available, or the other council members available to help sponsor.
Absolutely.
And just for timetable, Eric, and we'll deal with this approval in January. But our normal process would be, it would go to the RFP committee, who would then bring it to the next board meeting, and then the board would discuss and then move that recommendation to council. Does that work with your time frame? Because that would be the first week of February. Oh, you're muted, I think, or at least I can't hear you.
Sorry. So the short answer is probably no. And I'm just trying to put I just kind of put the timeline in chat, but I can send this around. It would probably take some massaging and maybe an additional meeting to help make, and mainly this is to make sure there isn't a gap. So it would be an ask, and I do appreciate, the challenge that brings.
So one thing that we do traditionally in the first meeting in January is we authorize, in unusual circumstances, for the executive committee to be able to do that approval of the board, or not the approval, but to make the recommendation, to move the recommendation forward to the city council. And then we come back in February and present to the board and have the board do the official approval. So that's part of what I needed to know, because we would need to make sure that we have that in place for executive to be able to do that, so we could keep this timeline, or as close to this timeline as possible.
Yeah, and there's some flexibility. Again, what we're trying to guard against, we're trying to make sure that there's at least a few week grace period here, so that if there is a change of vendor, right, that we don't, that we have a gap. But we're just really concerned about there being a gap of service. And so that's kind of what's driving this. And again, I do appreciate any flexibility. And I think that this is going to be, if we have a council member on the panel, then that makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, because then it won't be a surprise. There won't be, anything that's a surprise.
so to let you know, Eric, we never have before. Just so you know, doesn't mean it can't happen. And I understand what you're saying. It isn't that we've opposed it, or that it isn't. It just has never happened before. So, Councilwoman Wilkerson, we'd love to have you join if we figure out when we're going to do this committee and get all that set up. And if you have time, great, but it's not something we normally do.
And happy to help, and not necessary, because I'm sure I'd be the one sponsoring it, no matter what the venue was.
Right.
And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in my city council update, where we're at.
Okay, and then we'll, so you were looking at your material. You want the committee to get the packets, review packets sent to committee with scoring tools on the 7th, and then to meet and review the scores and determine awards the 11th through the 13th, correct?
Yeah, that's what allows us to do this and still have kind of like at least a kind of a 2 to 3 week grace period, if you will, because again, if Life Stories submits a proposal and they're selected, then there probably is no risk, because they're the ones that are doing it currently.
Right.
But if we choose someone different or additional, then obviously the process changes, and we want to make sure we have time to react to that process change.
Okay. And you want to take it to city council the 10th? No. What's January 10th?
The 17th. Oh, do you not have the chat up?
I
Yes,
do have the chat up. It's confirmed council review committee and scheduled meeting the week of January 10th.
January 17th is the board recommendation on council agenda.
yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the dates that are on there. The
Yeah,
last one is January 10th, so,
The
Oh,
17th is going to
that's
be a holiday for council.
So Eric, you want us to suspend the rules and vote on it the 17th?
Well, yes, I think we would try to seed it into the conversation, you
Okay.
know, on your schedule.
Okay,
But it really depends on when the information's available. So we might need that, yes.
well, but it's also, you got to get the recommendation of the board to go forward. The committee can't do it, so.
Yeah, that we need a date in there of at least executive board meeting. Because it doesn't go from the committee to council.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, and that's a good call out.
So the 12th is, no, the 19th. Well, you guys all figure out the schedule.
Yeah.
Just let me know what I'm doing.
Okay.
yeah, and we could work with that, Eric. We could do it if we need to at a study session
Yes.
to make the approval. So that
I
we will get it,
appreciate
once
that.
it comes before us, we will get it voted on and out the door.
Yeah, and because it's not a public meeting, can have an ad hoc meeting time, so we can have a different meeting time
So,
to fit in the schedule.
okay.
Thank you.
Just let me know what I'm doing when I'm in Mexico.
Okay.
And that's what I ask all the time.
I
Somebody tell me
know.
what I'm supposed to be doing. So
Yeah.
there you are.
And thank you for this, Eric, and thank you for the update. And I'm not sure if this is a question, I don't know if you can answer this or if this is a question, a city council question, but curious about where things stand on VOA Hope House.
Well, you know, and I know that Fawn spoke to Councilmember Wilkerson recently, so you know, I can defer to her. I do know obviously that we have a scheduled meeting, I think on the 8th, to sit down with them between the county and the city to look at the solutions piece. I think just an overall concern, you know, is certainly I think we're all motivated to make sure that solutions are found. You know, that's first. You know, secondarily, it's like, okay, so how do we set up a sustainable solution path?
Mhm.
Because we just don't want it to play out in the media or otherwise. We need to kind of find a sustainable, you know, financing path. And so part of that might be needing to take a deeper look in terms of, you know, the services and the capacities and anything else. And again, I think until we sit down with Fawn and her team, it's impossible for us to know, I think, exactly what that is going to look like. But part of this, I think, bridge funding piece is to honestly to at least buy a little bit of time so we can make sure that the right review and the right plan comes out of that.
Thanks, Eric. If there are no other questions for Eric, we will shift over to our city council update.
Thank you. Good to see you all again. Competing meetings these days. Let me just pick up where Eric left off with VOA. So I did meet with Fawn and there are obviously some real concerns. So it's coming up in the budget discussion because that's where we're at right now for the next year as to where those monies will come from. There were some really difficult questions asked by council as to how did this happen? At the bottom of the ninth, my new baseball analogy. So I think Fawn shared some stuff with me, which I will be sharing with council, but I'm like Eric, I believe I'm committed to making sure we have some bridge funding until they can figure out what else needs to happen. Fawn did share that, you know, her board is not excited about where they're at. If they can't get a sustainability plan, then they will pivot and not do sheltering and may even go to a treatment type center going forward, which is great because we need that, but we need the beds also. So you're right. It's a deeper dive than right now, along with everything else that's going on. So, and then I will go into the budget. This is just where I started when I came on council. I asked after coming to CHHS that so much of our money for these challenges are pass-through dollars. And I've been asking, well, where is the city's skin in the game? how much do we actually allocate out of the general budget, our share, towards addressing these issues? And I gotta tell you, it's not very much. And that's why we have not seen the outcomes that so many of us will see. So I am doing some pushing. I'd like to see it increased, and certainly in this budget, I'm asking what we will do differently. I just think that's just the way it has to be. So what's going on? Everything is budget, budget, budget. You've all heard the challenges and the loss. That's all true. All about staffing and lack of staffing. That's all true. But then how do we keep and support the staff we have right now, as we all know, as we're trying to fill those vacant positions? So that is the challenge. I don't see any civil service positions going away. There are some administrative things we're looking at, but we'll be talking more about that on Thursday. So if you have absolutely nothing to do at 11 o'clock, Zoom in the study session and you can hear all about it. Then also the other thing is the ARPA money. Wow, that is like Pandora's box right now because there's so many needs and that money is so flexible. So I will tell you that the challenge has been we had to actually stand up a process in how to get the money out the door. That was the first challenge. And then we accepted proposals and then how we are white papering them based on thought exchange. And a lot of that came around housing, mental health services, the arts, and the parks. Those were the four first top things out of the gate. So we are looking at that. I believe in January, you will start seeing some RFP go out, especially around the housing piece, and get that money out the door. That ARPA money is a rolling fund, so there's like no deadline. People think if I don't get my proposal in today, I won't get funded, but that's not true. So we're doing this on a rolling basis. So going forward, I would say monthly or every couple of weeks, new proposals will be presented at council. Council has to vote on all proposals before they advance forward. So there's a lot of input before it gets to the finish line. But I know there is frustration that we haven't got the money out the door yet. And a lot of cities have already. But we were pretty deliberate in conjunction with the city looking at lost revenues. And that's a reality that we do have to do some funding of lost revenues for the city. So I wish I had a concrete number for you, but I don't. But January, we will have something more concrete. And then, we have 2 new council members coming on board in January, and we are doing the shuffling of where people will be serving in these different capacities. So I'm not sure where I will be. I have put my name in for CHHS, but Jesus, there's a lot to do. So I'm just not sure. So I just want you to know I'm trying to work my way back because this is kind of where my little passion is in this arena. But I don't know who the other person will be if I maintain this position, or there might be 2 new people. So we will just see how that goes. Other than that, stay tuned. We have to finalize the budget by December 13th. And so we're like in a dead heat and lots of time being spent on numbers. I'm telling you, my eyes are crossed. I'm just being honest. I mean, after a while, they all start looking alike for those who've done budgeting. But we are getting there. And I think the city will be in good position when we've completed that task. That's all I got for you.
Thank you for volunteering again to be on the
Absolutely.
board.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what I was going to say. And yes, thank you for volunteering again. And we sure hope that we'll be seeing you on this board after the first of the year.
That makes me too. And if that works out, then I won't have these conflicting meetings
Right.
that has hampered my ability to attend more frequently. So, yeah.
Any additional questions or comments? Thank you so much. As far as committee updates, Affordable Housing's update was working on that SNAP approval, so I don't anticipate, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is that we won't be meeting this month, which if that's the case, we need to send that reminder out to the Affordable Housing Committee. Anything, Anne, about evaluation and RFP except for that you'll be meeting at the beginning of January?
Yeah, no, that's it. We did not meet this month either.
All right. Any other announcements for the good of the board? If not, then we can take a motion to adjourn a little bit early tonight.
I so move.
Thanks, Anne.
Second.
Thanks, Gordon. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone want to stick around? All right.
I'm gonna abstain. I'm gonna abstain. How about that?
Just so we
I'm
can
gonna
have
abstain.
that on. Yeah, you could stay. You could go or stay, whatever. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. And Eric, I'll be reaching out to you regarding the request for that extension on my board membership, because I'll need to write a letter and have you take that to traditionally what we do is then you would take that to the mayor's office to go through that process. So
No problem.
all right. Well,
And
thank
city
you all, and I hope
council.
you all have a what, Anne?
And it needs to go to city council,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it needs to go
So
through the full
Eric
process,
knows.
but mayor to
mayor,
Council.
yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
downhill slide or
Yeah.
uphill, whichever way you want to look at it.
There
Yeah,
we
there
go.
we
Thanks,
go.
Gary. All right. Thank you all for being
Thank you.
here. And I won't see most of you until afterwards. Have a wonderful holiday season and a very happy new year.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
To you too. Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.